Hello, history buffs, and welcome back to the Alternate History channel. We're diving back into the intriguing world of what-ifs, examining the roads not taken that could have reshaped our reality. If you're passionate about how history's key events shape the present, then you've found your tribe. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay updated on our latest adventures into alternate timelines. Today, we're turning our gaze toward post-World War II Britain. It's May 1945, Germany has just surrendered, and Winston Churchill, the indomitable wartime leader, is facing re-election. In our world, he lost, leading to a transformative Labour government under Clement Attlee. But what if Churchill had won instead? How would a Churchillian Britain have impacted not just the British Isles, but the entire world? Sit tight, because we're about to unravel this captivating scenario. Let's get started. In 1945, the United Kingdom was a country basking in the relief of victory over Nazi Germany, but also burdened with the financial and human costs of World War II. Winston Churchill, the iconic leader who had seen Britain through its darkest days, was up for re-election. Despite his wartime successes and popularity, Churchill faced opposition from Clement Attlee and the Labour Party, whose platform was focused on social welfare reforms. Voters had a choice: stick with the Lion of Britain who had roared defiance at Hitler, or turn toward a more domestically focused future. The election's historical outcome was a landslide victory for Attlee. With this shift, Britain took decisive steps towards constructing the modern welfare state, including the introduction of the National Health Service, NHS. Attlee's administration also set in motion the decolonisation process, a seismic shift that would redefine global geopolitics. British India was partitioned and gained independence, setting the stage for other colonies to follow suit. But what if the British electorate had made a different choice? What if they chose to keep Churchill at the helm? This scenario isn't as far-fetched as it might initially appear. After all, Churchill was a political chameleon who had switched parties twice in his career, and his views were not set in stone. So let's explore this alternative path. What if Churchill had won the 1945 election, allowing the Conservative Party to influence the trajectory of post-war Britain and its empire? In this alternate timeline, Churchill's victory would result in different domestic policies and perhaps even a slower pace of decolonisation. As we delve into this scenario, we'll examine how a Churchill-led Britain would navigate the early days of the Cold War, how it would handle its relationship with the United States, and whether it would hold on to its colonies longer than it did in our timeline. With Churchill at the helm, Britain retains a leader deeply committed to a strong military presence on the world stage. The immediate post-war years see less emphasis on social welfare reforms and more focus on maintaining Britain's status as a global power. The NHS, the jewel of Attlee's domestic policies, either takes longer to materialise or appears in a different, perhaps less comprehensive form. Relations between Britain and the United States stay strong, bolstered by Churchill's personal relationship with American leaders. The special relationship between the two nations likely becomes even more pronounced, affecting the geopolitical landscape of the early Cold War. Britain might also take a more active role in the newly formed United Nations, pushing for policies that suit its interests. On the colonial front, Churchill's victory probably results in a slower pace of decolonisation. The partitioning and independence of British India may be delayed or take on a different form. This delay has consequences for the Middle East as well, where Britain's colonial interests intersect with newly discovered oil resources. A slower exit from Palestine, India, and other territories changes the timeline and perhaps the outcomes of various independence movements. European recovery programs, such as the Marshall Plan, likely find a more enthusiastic supporter in Churchill, who understands the importance of a stable Europe to counter the rising Soviet threat. This focus could lead to an earlier or more robust form of NATO or other security arrangements aimed at containing communism. Domestically, Britain under Churchill might not see the same level of investment in social services as it did under Attlee, but it's likely that some form of welfare state still emerges. The political climate, however, might be less favourable for the unions and workers' rights, which could result in social unrest or protests. In summary, a Churchill-led Britain in the immediate post-war years would likely be more outward-looking and committed to maintaining its colonial possessions, while potentially slowing down the progress of social welfare reforms at home. The country's orientation would be much more aligned with the United States, especially in the budding stages of the Cold War. In the long term, Churchill's victory in the 1945 election profoundly reshapes Britain's post-war policy, impacting both domestic matters and international relations. His staunch anti-communism, coupled with an early focus on rebuilding Europe, influences the trajectory of the Cold War. Britain, under Churchill, leans even more closely to the United States, amplifying transatlantic cooperation in the face of Soviet expansionism. Churchill's desire to hold on to the remnants of the British Empire also shapes the contours of global geopolitics. The prime example of this imperial longing comes to light in 1956 during the Suez Crisis. Churchill, clinging to notions of Britain as a world power, might have taken a more unilateral, aggressive stance than his historical counterparts did. This bold approach to Suez could significantly alter relationships with the United States and other NATO allies, thereby reconfiguring the geopolitical landscape and perhaps even straining the special relationship between the US and Britain. Continued investment in colonial holdings leads to an extended timeline for decolonization. As the sun sets slower on the British Empire, anti-colonial movements in Africa, the Middle East and Asia gather more momentum, and independence, when it finally comes, is all the more fervent. Domestically, the absence of Labour's welfare state and nationalisation policies means a Britain that develops more along free market lines, with potentially less of a safety net for its citizens. The effects of this are multifaceted. Economic disparities could widen, but so too could the opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. The impact on Britain's cultural and social fabric would be equally lasting. The country might continue to see itself as a great power, and the idea of British exceptionalism could become even more deeply ingrained in the national psyche. Yet, this might come at a cost, including strained relations with its closest allies, and perhaps even a more tumultuous process of eventual decolonisation. We've journeyed through an alternate Britain, one where Winston Churchill remains at the helm in the post-war years. In this alternate timeline, we've seen ripple effects that stretch from the heart of London to the geopolitical structure of the world. From the Suez Crisis to the Cold War, the shadow of Churchill's influence extends far and wide, shaping events in ways both subtle and profound. But as always, history is a complex web, and our musings only scratch the surface of what could have been. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video and share it with fellow history enthusiasts. Your support is the fuel that keeps us digging into history's endless possibilities. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning what if.